Well, welcome back, everyone. I hope you enjoyed the documentary and found it as moving and meaningful as we did. Again, I'm Renee Muskie, the Manager of Public Programs here at the Momentary in Crystal Bridges. And we are so glad, again, that you are here with us tonight. So we're now going to transition to our panel discussion, where we'll hear directly from some of the people who made this story truly come to life. As the conversation begins, you'll notice that there's going to be a QR code that comes up behind the presenters. You can scan that at any time to submit a question. We'll be collecting audience questions throughout the talk and share a selection of them during the final 15 minutes when we have our Q&A period. Tonight's conversation is also being live streamed by Arkansas PBS and will be available to rewatch at the Arkansas PBS live website, along with other talks from our ongoing partnership. We're grateful to work with public media to help bring conversations like this to Northwest Arkansas and beyond. And now I am honored to introduce tonight's moderator. Sajni Kumpuris is the Director of Education and Production at Arkansas PBS, where she has led award-winning educational programming, including Arkansas AMI, Rise and Shine, and Mystery League, which was recently picked up for national distribution. She also oversees Arkansas Ideas, the state's largest online professional development resource for educators, and serves on the PBS Kids Leadership Council. She's also the producer of Unveiled, the film that we just watched. Please welcome me in joining Sajni Kumpuris to the stage.
Thank you so much. If you guys want to go ahead and come up, I'll introduce you when you get up here. Hello. Thank you so much for being here with us today. It feels like the first time every time we watch it, so it's very special to us. First with me is the filmmaker, the producer and director of Unveiled, Nathan Willis. He is an Emmy-winning filmmaker with a passion for the American South and telling stories through film. The next person you've seen recently, right? One of the main people in our documentary, Kevin Kresse, is an Arkansas artist. He has created an array of public works, and his sculptures and paintings have been exhibited throughout the country. Kevin created the 8-foot-tall bronze sculpture of Arkansan Johnny Cash, now standing in Statuary Hall. Next, Shane Broadway. He was the chairman of the National Statuary Hall Steering Committee, and in that role, he spearheaded replacing Arkansas's longtime statues in the U.S. Capitol with statues of civil rights activists Daisy Bates and music icon Johnny Cash. Shane serves as Vice President of University Relations at Arkansas State University System. So thank you guys for being here for this discussion. Shane, I'm going to start with you because that's where it all started. In April 2019, a special vote took place in the Arkansas legislature that led to us making the statues and subsequently the film. Shane, just tell us how it all started.
You don't have enough time. Nathan really starts it off, the film starts it off kind of sharing a part of that. And let me just say, I've watched it a million times, and I still get emotional every time. I've said throughout this whole process, somebody said, what's it like to work with two great artists? I said, I didn't work with two great artists. I worked with three, and Nathan's the third. And so thank you, Nathan.
Thank you.
I also want to thank Arkansas PBS for their partnership, and I'll mention that as part of this conversation too. But also, since we're at Crystal Bridges and the Momentary, the Walton Foundation, Stuart Walton, Walmart, were all very helpful in terms of helping us finance the statues. And so I want to give a special thanks to them since I am sitting in Bentonville. So thank you. So it began, as you saw, that was Senator Dave Wallace, who's from Leachville, Arkansas, he also represents DICE, was the first person that you saw on screen. He actually came to me. I work for the Arkansas State University system. We own the Johnny Cash Boyhood Home that you saw through the film, and also the whole DICE colony that Johnny grew up in. We own it. It's part of one of our heritage sites. We also have a Hemingway Pfeiffer site, a Lakeport plantation, and another thing in Tyronza, Southern Tenant Farmers Union. And so he came to me because we work with the Cash Family Trust. And so anything that has Johnny Cash's image, face, anything, has to go through the trust and be approved. So he came and asked, he said, I'm thinking about, several of us legislators were in D.C. We took a night tour. I think it was Senator Bozeman, who gave the night tour. And they got to our statues, the Arkansas statues, and nobody knew who they were. I knew who they were because 30-something years ago, as an intern for then Senator David Pryor, it was President Clinton's first summer in the White House. I was about to be a senior in college, Matilda, and I was a Capitol tour guide. So I talked about Uriah Rose and James Clark every single day, 100 times a day. And so I knew a little bit about them, but they did not. And so Senator Wallace approached me and said, I want to do Daisy Bates and Johnny Cash. We want to change ours out. And this was before Congress passed a resolution asking states to do that, to get rid of some of the Civil War statues that are in the building. So to give credit to the Arkansas General Assembly, they did all this before that happened. And so I was Speaker of the House when we created Daisy Bates Day in Arkansas. And then obviously I worked with the Johnny Cash folks. So they filed the bill. The Senate, you heard Jim Hendren, who was then the pro tem. The Senate actually had a committee of the whole, which is very rare. And they debated several names, and Nathan did a great job of describing all the ones that were kind of talked about, and they took a vote. And at every turn, it was always Johnny Cash and Daisy Bates. And the bill got down to the House, so it passed the Senate, got down to the House, and ran into a little bit of issue. You had some members who had concern about Johnny's past. But it was, at the end of the day, you heard some of them talk about the redemption of Johnny Cash. That ended up sealing the deal and getting enough votes to pass it. And we had a big signing with Roseanne there and Daisy's family. She didn't have a lot of family, a goddaughter that was there. And so that's really kind of how it began, and then it kind of sat there. Jamie Land is here. She was our event manager for both ceremonies. And so nothing was really happening, and I just went to the governor's office and Secretary of State's office and said, look, if something ever does happen with this, we want to be involved. We want to make sure the Cash family's involved because it has to go through the trust. My office is across the street from the Capitol. I had that conversation. By the time I get back across the street, I get a phone call from Governor Hutchinson and one of his aides, now Judge Karen Watley, and says, we think you should chair the committee. I said, that's not what I said. I just said that we need to make sure the Cash family is, no, that's what we heard. So you've already been elected, it's already over. So here I am 6 years later now. And I will say, I've been very blessed to do a lot of things in my life. A lot of friends in this room who have blessed me in many ways. This will go down as one of the greatest experiences of my lifetime. And it was not on my bingo card. And so that's really kind of how we got to this place where after a century, Rose and Clark have been there over a century, that Arkansas, and that's the way it has to happen. The legislature has to make that change. And they did.
Thank you. So, as I mentioned, it all started in 2019, and I believe it was 2024 that they went in. So I'm sure there were many, many challenges.
Yeah.
Can you kind of walk us through some of those challenges that you faced or overcame during this time?
COVID would be one.
For sure.
The ouster of the Speaker of the House would be another. The young lady, Dana, who helped us with the ceremonies, who worked for the Speaker of the House's office, after they oust Speaker McCarthy, Speaker Johnson's staff starts going through the office and says, what do you do, what do you do, what do you do? And they get to Dana and they say, what do you do? She said, I handle National Statuary Hall and the Congressional Gold Medals. They were like, we do that? Stay there. So that actually helped us, but you know, it was an amazing process because it had been 100 years. There's no paperwork describing how Rose and Clark got there. All we know is the artist and what date they were installed. That's it. There's no record. And that's why you're here tonight. We wanted to make sure there was a record, that we left something behind. And so, fortunately, we were introduced through Benjamin. You saw the statue of the chief figure. That's Chief Standing Bearer of Nebraska. That was done by Benjamin also. And so Benjamin introduced us to a lady named Katie Brossi, worked for the largest law firm in D.C. If she charged us for every hour we talked to her, we would still owe her about $10 million. Instead, we made her an honorary Arkansan and got her a Gibson, right? Gibson guitar? Martin guitar. Gosh, Mr. Martin's going to kill me. Erase that. We give her a Johnny Cash Martin guitar, Johnny Cash edition Martin guitar signed by Johnny's family, the kids and grandkids. So I figure, you know, it's a priceless thing. That'll make up for the $10 million we used of her. But Katie had done Nebraska's statues, and they had done, their PBS did about a 5-minute video about Chief Standing Bearer. And that gave us the idea, because that was the one thing we talked about early on, was documenting everything. I have every email, I have every document we ever did, so that we can give it to the archives, so that 100 years from now, the legislature decides to change it, they've got something to go by, a book. But the biggest thing was we wanted to document this by video. And so we went to Governor Hutchison, told him the idea, and he said, why don't you do 30 minutes on each of them? We're like, wow, okay. So he gave us the money to PBS. They wisely hired Nathan to create a story that we originally were thinking was going to be two 30-minute separate stories. How he weaved that together is magic and amazing and more than we ever could have thought. So we had many more obstacles, engineering packets and all these kinds of things that we had to do, but those were some of the big ones.
So, you know, I think about who we selected and being from Arkansas and how rich it is that we picked these two individuals. So how do you think they represent us today and who we are in Arkansas?
I don't think I could say it any better than what was said in the film. I thought about that question while I was sitting there watching that. Nathan captured that so well. And the other thing I was sitting there thinking with Benjamin and Kevin, just how much they immersed themselves in the lives of Daisy and Johnny, going to the home, going to Johnny's home, and studying. I mean, when Kevin came into his presentation, I'll get to your answer. Kevin comes in for his presentation. He walks in, and it's a 3-foot maquette. That was the process. We sent out RFQs. We had a list of artists all around the country. We had, I mean, you would recognize the statue. You may not recognize the artist, but you would recognize the statue. Amazing artist, gifted artist, the guy that does the bust for the NFL Hall of Fame. And so to get down, we got from 36 to 10. We did Zoom interviews, got down to 3. We had 5 total finals for both statues. We're in the governor's conference room. We gave them money to do a 3-foot maquette of what they would do. And Benjamin does his, amazing. I mean, the guy's so gifted. There's a reason he's the youngest, and there's a reason he has the most. Kevin walks in, and everything's under a veil. Everybody else just walked in with their statue, and we're sitting there looking at each other like, what the? And Kevin comes in, and instead of just showing us the statue, Kevin tells a story. And he tells the story of the life of Johnny Cash. And that gets to some of this, to your question, Sajni, is the stories of both of these individuals are just so amazing that they rose from where they came from to the heights that they rose to. You can't even make it up. You can't even write it. There's no movie script. You could create it. And so Kevin tells a story about Johnny Cash. And I remember Beth Guy, we had people who have various backgrounds in art. I'm not an artist. I have a great appreciation. But so Kevin finally finishes his story and pulls off the veil. And I remember Beth looking at me astonished. I mean, her face, she just, because we're separated 6 feet out. Remember, this is COVID. And she looks at me, she's like, oh my God, that's Johnny Cash. And I was like, well, duh. What did you think he was going to do? But that's how he won it. That's how he won the commission, was his presentation. But it was because they both studied the intimate lives of both Daisy and Johnny. And they depicted it so well in the final product. Every inch of both of those statues tell a story of Daisy Bates and Johnny Cash. And we could have not done any better. Amazing people, amazing artists, just a blessing.
And I think about the long-term impact this has. So likely, like the last statue, maybe 100 years, they're in our nation's capital, and kids and families and people from other countries will come to DC and see who we have to represent us here in Arkansas. So do you feel the same, Shane, that this will have a long-term impact?
Yes. And that was part of what we talked about too, was we wanted to tell the Arkansas story of Daisy Bates and Johnny Cash, and they did that through the statue. But there's also a history that all the tour guides, Kevin met with the tour guides before the unveiling. And so before COVID, it's getting back to this number, but before COVID, there were 4 million visitors a year that come through the U.S. Capitol. Where Johnny's statue is, Daisy is next to Jefferson Davis, if you didn't notice. She's across from Rosa Parks. That was on purpose. We had the choice. We could put Johnny there or Daisy there. We thought, she's going right there. Where Johnny was going to go was going to be upstairs in Emancipation Hall, and the way Kevin had done the design, you could see him kind of ducking his head. So we believe this to be partly true. The architect of the Capitol called us one day and said, because of the way his head's going to be, it looks like he's trying to duck from the ceiling. We think he ought to be down on the floor. Well, where Johnny is, every tourist who comes into the U.S. Capitol has to walk by Johnny Cash. And so you're going to have all these millions of visitors who are going to see that, getting in line to get their ticket to take that Capitol tour. And so our hope, and I've said this a million times, is that they hear the Arkansas story of Johnny Cash and Daisy Bates, and it makes them want to visit and come to learn more. Go to Johnny's house in Dice. Come to Daisy's house in Little Rock and be a tourist. Come to Arkansas and see who we really are and see how the lives, these people who came from these beginnings rose to be one of only 100 people in this country to have a statue in the United States Capitol. And so that's our long-term hope, and to have a piece that we leave behind that is going to be shown in every Arkansas history class. It's going to be part of the curriculum for Arkansas history for years to come. And that was our hope, was to kind of leave that legacy behind. And I pray we did. I think we did.
Wonderful. I think I'm right, but I hope I am. Daisy Bates' statue, her point of view, who she's looking at, can you tell us who that is?
That's Rosa Parks. That's right across from her. We always say she's giving a side eye to Jefferson Davis over there. One unique thing about Daisy's is that most of the statues in there have a sub base. You got the statue, a little base that they sit on, and then the 3-foot base that Kevin did, that Kevin has. Daisy is the only statue of the 100 that doesn't have a sub base. If you ever go to the Capitol and see it, her back heel is actually off the ground about that much. There are 2 bolts that go through the shoe of Daisy, and it's amazing how Benjamin came up. He just, when he'd done so many, he had to come up with some new idea, and that's what he did. And then on Kevin's, if you go and you're looking at Johnny, turn your phone light on, and in the jacket on the left side, Kevin inscribed Johnny's children's names. And so there's so many unique and special features about the statues themselves that tell a whole other story.
Thank you, Shane.
And I'm not going to tell anything about Kevin forgetting to buy his airline ticket to come to the ceremony.
That's
Did
a
I
good
say
one.
that?
Yeah.
He always says details, details.
So, Kevin, you're next. As an artist, you have to capture a person's essence, essentially, in a single pose. So could you share your process and approach of doing that, and what are some of the most important things that you consider?
And I had to have help getting my airline tickets, and I had to get, Shane helps me through everything. And I hope with your documenting everything, you didn't document all my panicked and crying phone calls to you during, okay, that's just, okay. Then scratch that last remark. Yeah, no, that's one of the most difficult things. I mean, you think about if you're doing a biopic on somebody, you have a couple of hours to try to tell their story. And yes, it's true. You just have this frozen moment, and you're trying to sum up a person. So, I mean, I was working, I do as much research as, I probably read 8 or 9 books on Johnny. I'd seen so many videos, I've gone through so much. So that helps because things will start to feel right or feel wrong. I was originally starting off with some kind of like the power pose, the legs are apart, the hands, and then I kind of slipped them behind, kind of a humble in the back pocket. And that didn't quite feel right. I had the guitar upright with a hand on that, and it was like still not quite right. And you're just moving around until these things work. Now, one thing, it was true, it was during COVID, and when I became one of the 3 finalists, I was thinking I really need a model to work from. And it hit me one night. I thought, oh my God, there's all these Johnny Cash impersonators. And so I started flipping through, and most of them were doing young Johnny Cash. And then I came across Terry Lee Goffey, who was older. Physically, he looked very similar, and I went, oh my God. So I wrote him, and he wrote me right back, and he said, I'd be honored to model for you. And he goes, so I was figuring he's somewhere in the South, and I said, well, where do you live? And he goes, about 50 miles outside of Cleveland. And I was like, well, that wouldn't be Cleveland, Mississippi, would it? And I was like, so anyway, he said, my wife and I would be happy to drive down to Little Rock. And I said, no. I said, I don't have the gig yet. I mean, and I said, if I don't get it, I said, my old Catholic guilt would kick in so hard I'd have to commit Harry if you came all the way down. So we ended up meeting in Nashville. And by this time, I had kind of worked out the pose where I thought I was felt pretty confident about it. And Terry, he's got that voice too. And so we're in there, and my wife, Bridget, we're meeting with Terry and his wife. And it didn't deliver like I was hoping it would. And I was like, because you've got the pressure of all this. And And then Terry goes, you know, I do the ragged old flag. And he basically took the pose and he just shifted the weight just a little bit and kind of went back a little bit. And it changed everything. The hair on my neck went up. I looked over and Bridget's eyes were as big as saucers, and you could just feel it in the room. I was like, oh my God, that's it. And so it is, I always talk about how it's success or death just by these millimeters as you're working on a sculpture, because it has a domino effect. And so you're constantly chasing your tail around. And so it was interesting to me that the pose was almost there, but it was just this subtle movement. But it felt like it worked. It's true you're having to leave out so much. I mean, Johnny Cash had a wonderful sense of humor. You know, you just can't put everything in. But I was hoping, one of the things I was thinking about with the pose, though, is that it's very much a one-on-one interaction between the viewer and the sculpture. And so that was one thing I was after. I went up to the Capitol and I looked through the collection, and so many of the old ones are sort of these proclamation type sculptures, and you just don't feel it. So if I had him looking down, I wanted him looking at you, but I wanted him looking through you. That was sort of the thing I was after, and that seemed to kind of work for me. Let me show you how to do that.
So I could clearly see from the documentary, you worked with Roseanne and you worked with the family. How important was that for you to get to know the family, to create something about their family?
Well, it's always crucial. Anytime I'm having done paintings and doing portraits, doing a three-dimensional posthumous piece, a portrait or whatever, is the most difficult. And it's really difficult when you're trying, one, to get the likeness, going from 2D to 3D. You want to get the likeness, but then you're trying to get the spirit and the soul and get that inhabited in the clay. And that's a whole nother step that you're trying to get to. If there's ever any family around, I always go to the family, because the family's happy, everybody's happy. No one knows the subject better than the family. So I was fortunate. Benjamin, I kind of felt for him because Daisy didn't have children, and there weren't, he didn't have the time or resources that I had. And it helped so much, because even after I won, from what I showed at the state capitol, the four girls were really wonderful, because they had this wonderful blend of having their pom-poms out for me the whole time, but with these little bitty, well, don't mess it up, but just, it maybe if you just took them out, you know, and I go, yeah, and I just slice it out and, you know, move it around and everything, send it back, and they go, oh my God, that's it. And so that was huge to have the family working with me. And I was able to FaceTime one time with one of the daughters, Kathy, and her husband is a big guy, Jimmy, who Johnny would give his clothes to. And so I loved him too, because I'm FaceTiming with Kathy, and it's the three-dimensional maquette, and I hear him come on going, legs are too short, coat's too long. And I hear her going, oh, Jimmy, and I go, no, that's perfect. That's what I need right there. Just let's cut to the chase, you know. So,
Well, as a viewer, just watching the documentary, it was very emotional to see his sister. How did that feel for you to let her experience that moment?
What was interesting was Joanne, the sister, she was the first Cash family member I met, and this was before DC came up, because you saw the other Arkansas musicians. What had happened was in 2016, I received the commission to do the bust of Lee Von Helm. And when I was driving back from the Delta, it was really occurring to me about how many, as a very amateur musician, I was thinking, oh my God, we had so many incredible Arkansas musicians. And so I just started on my own, sculpting them. So Al Green, young Johnny Cash, Sister Rosetta Tharpe, Glenn Campbell, and I was working on Louis Jordan when the DC project came up. So I had a little bit of a leg up in that I had already been doing research on Johnny. I hadn't met any Cash members except I'd gone up to DICE for the Johnny Cash Heritage Festival, and that's where I met Joanne. And at that time, she could see fine and everything. And so I was kind of giving her the regular spiel. If you see anything, just let me know. And she'd go, oh, I will. I mean, she was like spunky. And so she was great. So I had that little bit of history with her. And so to see her again and then to see her with, trying to, it was just like take my heart out and show it to me.
I just remembered this. So we're standing there before they unveil the statue. The sisters and Joanne are across, and Kevin comes over to me. He says, stand by me in case they don't like it. And I was like, I think you're okay. But the family had come to us the night before. I didn't know Joanne had lost her sight. They came the night before and said, can she go see it? We were like, it's under a veil. I mean, there's thousands of people that are going to be in there. And then so I thought about it for a minute, and so I went back to Roseanne or one of them. I said, all right, here's what I'm going to tell you. You're not supposed to touch the statue. I said, but you tell Joanne when that veil comes off, she can do whatever she wants to do, and I will take the heat for it. I'll deal with the architect of the Capitol. I'll apologize. I'll explain, whatever. And so she does. I mean, she goes right for the leg. And I told Nathan what was going to happen. And I look over at Nathan, he's like...
You saw the camera folks there. It was 20, 30 people we were competing with, and I just happened to be at that spot. And I was like, oh gosh, I hope this is in focus. I hope this is in focus. I hope I'm recording. And I watched it when I got home, and I was like, oh my gosh, it's magic.
It's like, this is the money shot. And we were all doing fine. She goes up, and she's just standing there, and she's holding it. And everybody's still standing around there. We're doing okay until she says, and I still get emotional, I love you, Johnny Cash. I miss you, Johnny Cash. And we all lost it. I mean, lost it. So it was an amazing moment.
That's amazing. Okay, I have one more question for you, Kevin. 8 foot tall, large bronze statue. How do you even approach something like that? Have you made one that big in the past?
I did General William O. Darby for Fort Smith, World War II, started the U.S. Rangers. He would have been 7 feet tall, but he was on his Harley that he would get around. That was 9 feet long, so that was big. But yeah, bronze, sculpting bronze, you got to really get the hands to get that metal to move like that, But,
yeah.
but I was up for no. Yeah, it's a thing, and as I call him, the pirate up at the foundry that I've been using for well over 20 years. It's amazing. Those guys are artists and are incredible. And so when you bring the clay up, I have to bring him up Frankenstein style, cutting him into pieces and everything, and then putting them all back together at the foundry. They come in and look, and from the wax department to the mold making department and everything, and they all chip in about where it needs to be cut for them to cast. He was probably in 8 pieces for them to cast separately, and then they weld it all back together. They have to match my mark making so that you don't see it, and it's really staggering what they're able to do, for sure.
So I have one more. I
Sure.
just would like to know what you hope for this statue and what you hope its impact will be in the future, now and in the future.
One of the things, like I said, I threw my hat in the ring for Daisy. I would have loved to have had them both. But when you're dealing with someone as well known as Johnny is, and it looks like he will continue to be well known, for me it was important when I'm representing the state of Arkansas. That's what I think really helped me a lot, was being from here. It's like I never met him, but I know him. I know him through so many people. So you're making thousands and thousands of little decisions, and I wanted to bring out that humanity of him. I love the quote that goes with it. That helps bring out the personality of the person that's on the bass when he says, you know, we all have a choice and I choose love. So for me, I was trying to stay away as much as possible from any sort of stage persona, Johnny Cash, and was to get the humanity of him so that when people come to see, it's a one-on-one interaction. It's like a poem versus a big song that's going out to an arena. And that's what I was really after. And I think that's, you can see the base that he's on. It's supposed to represent his front porch. It's just the old wooden, kind of beat up wood. There's just little details, things like that, that I'm just trying to bring him back to his roots. And once again, his humanity, that there's that interaction between him and the viewer.
Wonderful. Am I correct? He is the only musician
Correct.
in Statuary Hall. I mean, that's amazing. The only musician. Everyone gets 2 per their state, so we should be very proud. Okay, Nathan. Last. Yeah, let's see. I don't think it is.
Check, check, check. Oh. Magic touch, magic touch. No, it's working, it's working.
Oh, it
Yeah.
is?
Just gotta hold it right here.
Okay, Nathan. So, as director, you did have a huge responsibility of telling 2 individual legendary stories while also infusing the stories of the artist who created their statues. So if you would, please share a little bit about your approach and what was important to tell in this story. And of course, you know, any challenges you encountered, which I know you have.
Yeah, yeah, I mean, there were tons of challenges.
I talk about how difficult I was to work with.
Yeah, this
and
diva,
that's,
I know, and it's just really hard to work with. No, so the reason I got into documentary filmmaking is I just really love people, and I like embedding myself in their lives and getting to know them, and this intimacy that I'm able to build with participants that I film with. And I love Ken Burns documentaries. I've seen all of his films, but that's just not the type of films that I want to make. So when we're making something about history, I wanted to find a way to tell a story in a contemporary way while also teaching you about these individuals. And hopefully, you know, from my experience, most people don't know a lot about Daisy Bates, even in Arkansas. They're surprised with a lot of the stuff you hear. And, you know, with Johnny Cash, like, it's like, yeah, it's how many documentaries, how many books about him, you know a lot. So, yeah, trying to tell a contemporary story about these historic figures was something, and I think we just kind of lucked out with telling the story of these statues being made, because that was just like a perfect vehicle for that. And then, you know, the biggest challenge I think was also making it film like a cohesive film. Shane kind of talked about that. I did not want it to feel like, okay, here's the Johnny Cash section of the film, here's the Daisy Bates section of the film. Like, there's clearly some similarities with their childhoods, and but, you know, just the way they ended up in life, like Johnny Cash being a multimillionaire, Daisy Bates dying, you know, in debt. So I had a hard time like figuring out how are we going to weave these stories together. And I think I talked to Sajni and Courtney Pledger, the former executive director of Arkansas PBS. I was like, I don't think we could do it. Like, I was openly advocating for this to be 2 separate films, because I didn't want Johnny Cash to overshadow Daisy Bates, and there's just a lot of stuff that I was considering. But I think my light bulb moment that came a few months before we started really putting the finishing touches on it, and I don't need to look at it as a Johnny Cash documentary, Daisy Bates documentary, Kevin Kresse documentary, Benjamin Victor documentary. I think it's a documentary about Arkansas, and I think Arkansas is the main character of this film, and I think it's a film about what story is Arkansas telling about itself by picking these 2 people. And when I looked at it that way, it was just, I think it came together, and so I think it worked out.
We realize how much we have in common with each other, regardless of our upbringing or our, you know, in Arkansas, we really, it's like how everyone says, you probably can figure out one person you know everybody in Arkansas, at least one person who knows one person, because we're connected. So, and I actually know this is unique. You timed out how much time you devoted to Daisy and Johnny, and you didn't do it intentionally, but you really were trying to tell both their stories. So, you know, how did you balance that? How did you approach it so you would give each its due time in the documentary, plus the artists who were creating, you know, the statues for them?
Yeah, it was kind of easy to kind of figure out what parts of their lives do we want to focus on, because you had kind of already made that decision with Johnny, where you're talking about the, you know, the hard times he had, the drug addiction. So like clearly we were able to do that, and same with Benjamin. I mean, I had probably over 100 hours of footage, and what I would do is I would just watch the footage, and any scene that was usable, I would write down on an index card. And I have pictures, and I have like my whole floor in my office is just full of index cards, and I'm just moving it around, just seeing, okay, this scene can lead to here, this feels natural. And when I mentioned the whole looking at it as Arkansas story, not necessarily about these two individuals, I don't know if this is a good answer, but it just kind of happened. I was so surprised. I'd done a rough cut, we had talked about it, and I was like, I just want to go back, make sure that we're pretty even. And I think it was like 28 minutes for Daisy Bates and 27 minutes for Johnny Cash or something, and it was just like, okay, I guess I can't touch this now. I guess this is perfect. So yeah, it was just lucky. And I think a challenge with Daisy Bates was there's, you know, hundreds and thousands of hours of archival footage of Johnny Cash from the Johnny Cash show, from all the documentaries that have been made about his life. There's very little about Daisy Bates. And that was very hard to find, and we found an archival producer who found the March on Washington speech that we had having a hard time tracking down, and just found all these really great moments with her. And so when we had that, that was another thing. It's like, if we can't find any Daisy Bates archival, I don't want to have a bunch of Johnny Cash archival and have just pictures of Daisy Bates. So if we couldn't have found that archival of Daisy Bates, I think we probably would have just been a lot more pictures. So when we were able to find those videos, I think that really helped balance it out and make it more of a full story as well.
So tell me a little bit about filming at the U.S. Capitol and kind of the behind the scenes, and also just that moment when the unveiling happened.
Yeah, I mean, it was magical. I don't know how else to say it. I mean, just to be in that moment, knowing this is a moment in history and how often this happens. It's so rare, and just felt a lot of pressure, and like, again, like to make sure I'm recording and make sure it's in focus, make sure the audio's getting caught and all that, because it's not one of those things where it's like, excuse me, Speaker Johnson, can you do that speech again? I wasn't rolling. So I mean, that was great. And I did get in trouble with Capitol Police a couple times because the pass they gave me said all access. And I asked, I was like, does this mean I can go anywhere in the Capitol right now? And one intern was like, yeah, you can go do whatever. And so I was like filming at some random statue. I think they had mentioned Frederick Douglass. And I was like, oh, I gotta go get a shot of the Frederick Douglass. And then the Capitol Police found me and escorted me away. And I showed them my badge, and they're like, no, that's not what that means. And so I did not get kicked out. But yeah, no, it was great. And then just goosebumps when you're seeing it unveiled. And I mean, it felt, I don't know, we're in a moment in time where I just feel like I said in my opening statements, I feel like our common ground is just kind of disappearing. But to be in this moment where Mike Johnson and Hakeem Jeffries are speaking about the same thing, and the same two people, and celebrating this, I'm like, it just makes me think that, like, maybe, you know, maybe it's just a moment, maybe moments like that will never happen, but to be in that moment was something special, and it's something I'll never forget.
So something I know about you, there is another documentary that Nathan made for us called Seven Days, the Opioid Crisis. And what I remember about that was a few years ago. You never go in knowing what your story is. You allow the interviews and the stories that you hear from people, from their heart, what means something to them. And I think that's wonderful. what were those interviews and stories that really hit you on this to make this documentary?
Yeah, that's another thing I love about doc filmmaking is just kind of building the ship as you're flying it, or however that goes. But I just, the way I shoot, like I don't really know what I'm going to get into. So the cool thing about this moment, the two moments that stick out to me the most are when Benjamin came. It was the first week, April of 2022, I think was our first time filming. And we went to Central High, and that's where we met Ranger Randy Dotson, who is in the film. And him and Benjamin just kind of hit it off while Benjamin was doing his tour of Central High. And then one of the guys was like, "Do you want to come see it?" And Randy was like, "Yeah, sure." He came on his lunch break, and that was the moment where it's just, I did not script that. I did not know he was going to have that reaction. I just happened to put a microphone on him before he walked into the room, and it was just, I keep saying magical, but it was just a beautiful moment. And and then the same thing happened with Miss Christian, the principal of Daisy Bates Elementary. I knew the kids were coming, and I wanted to film it. And I had not even met her. I'd been talking to people with the Little Rock School District. That was how I got permission to film at the school. And then when I got there, I was like, there's something about Miss Christian. I'm going to put a mic on her, too. And so I put a mic on her, and then she goes in there and has this magical reaction with Benjamin. And so that's what I love about doc filmmaking. It's like, if you allow it, if you set yourself up, like moments like that happen. And then a challenge with that was the very first week of filming. We still had 2.5 years to go at that point. So I was like, how on earth do I make these moments be at the end of the film? And so that was another challenge in editing. And yeah, so that was fun. Those moments were really cool.
Another one, he wasn't there, but he anticipated, was the Roseanne moment. We were giving her an honorary degree, and so she was in town for that, and I said, why don't we show her something? And so you came up, and he found out about it, and so sent a photographer. We had no clue that was going to be her reaction.
No, and I mean, and you know, Roseanne's a very strong, straight-ahead type, person, and it's always nerve-wracking. Like I was talking about, when the family sees it, you're always just going, "Oh, please like it, please like it." And so for her to get emotional, I was just like, yes. I mean, it's a huge, and there's nothing more gratifying, than to see when they're not just trying to be polite and go, yeah, that's from this angle right here low with that light there, that really looks like him, so it was.
But if he hadn't suggested it, we would have missed that moment.
Yeah.
All I would have had was a still photographer off my phone. Mm-hmm. So that's why he's as great as he is.
Get lucky.
Yes. So I think we're going to take a couple of questions, and while we get those ready, if you have any questions, Nathan, I just have one more. Music, of course, played a big role in this documentary. Can you kind of share how you utilized music?
Yeah, and trying to figure out, like, how do we weave these two different individuals together. I mean, music we're making a Johnny Cash documentary. We got to think a lot about the music, but also thinking, how do we capture that, but also the Daisy Bates story? What do we do for the music with her portion? And so I wanted to do something that was more gospel-centered, because I know how much the gospel songs meant to the civil rights movement. So we worked with Greg, an amazing choreographer, composer, who was able to kind of weave that together, the gospel of the civil rights movement and kind of the twangy Johnny Cash moments. And we ended this song on Amazing Grace because early on in the filmmaking process, I had heard the Johnny Cash album. I think it's Songs from My Mother's Hymnal, where he's just singing old hymn songs. And Where We'll Never Grow Old was one of the first songs I hear, where he's like, we're going to a land where we'll never grow old. And I just thought how beautiful of an idea that Johnny Cash had this hard life for his whole entire life, and now he's finally going to this place where he's never going to grow old, and he's going to be in the Capitol. So this idea of getting to the promised land. And the same for Daisy Bates with, you know, dying kind of in obscurity and poverty. Like, she's finally getting the recognition we deserve. So to me, this idea that they were both getting to heaven, getting to the promised land, and the whole idea of we've been there 10,000 years. I don't know if they're going to be there 10,000 years, but it's a beautiful thought to think about, that, you know, maybe we can all find our own promised land one day.
Thank you. Renee, do we have any questions?
We do. Can you hear me? Yeah, so we had some wonderful questions from the audience. A few of you wanted to know a little bit more about where people can see more of your work. So this is for both Nathan and Kevin. So Kevin, can you tell us about other art you have installed around Arkansas so we can see and interact with more of what you create, just in case we can't make it to DC? And also Nathan, where can people see more of your documentaries?
Yeah, I have a website, I'm on social media. This is my third feature. I have a couple more I'm working on now. I've done a lot of short form documentary work. You can go to Nathan Willis Films or muddyriverfilms.com is where my work lives. But yeah, I'm working on a few exciting projects. So if you follow me on social media, just search Nathan Willis. You can see what's happening.
You know, when it comes to media and social media, I might as well be a great grandpa. So I had a website, and as I said, it had mold growing on it. But I think I have a new one, but I'm not even sure. But it should be kevinkresse.com. As far as public work, when the film started, that was the 7th Street underpass, and that's where I was doing the very first mural that I ever did. And since then, I did in North Little Rock a Dogtown Proud mural and a bicycling mural, and then I did the Boys and Girls Club over there as well. So, but I'm really excited. It's going to be announced pretty soon, but we're working on this dream that I had about the Arkansas musicians coming together, and so hopefully we'll be having a reproduction of Johnny Cash that'll be just as the DC one will be in Central Arkansas, with eventually hopefully bust of 20 Arkansas musicians. So I'm super excited about that. And then
there's also the bust of Win Rockefeller in the Capitol, state Capitol.
yes, that's right.
by
I
the
did Win
Lieutenant
Paul
Governor's office.
Rockefeller.
Win Paul.
Yeah, that's in the state capitol. And I'm actually being talked to right now about doing one of his father, Winthrop Rockefeller, and being talked about doing one of Maurice Footsie Britt, the most decorated, who was also in the film at the beginning, who was Governor Rockefeller's lieutenant governor. So it's that small degree of separation that Arkansas always seems to present. So.
Thank
Wonderful.
you. Well, we have time for just one more question. And this one is, I love that this was made through public media. It feels like the kind of story we don't always get to see. How can people support more projects like this and keep public media going strong?
Sounds like a question for you, Sajni.
For the director to me.
Would
Sure.
you know anything about that?
I know a little bit about that. So, yes, I mean, you can always, you know the saying, viewers like you, that's where we get our support. So we always appreciate and are grateful for any support that you can give us. This project was a local production. It was made in Arkansas. It was funded from Arkansans, and we have a lot of those programs that we do that are focused on our state, that are important to us here, and I think every state needs to have those stories and continue, and I think that's what public media does so well. We want to tell the stories of Arkansans, and we're storytellers. We like to work with filmmakers and people and really get to the heart of who we are. So we will just continue to make good content, and we appreciate your support, and we are absolutely looking forward to whatever comes next, whatever project we do next. I know, because I'm a part of it, we're we're doing a new 90-minute documentary on Arkansas history. So, for our 60th anniversary, we're going to look at the archives. So we just continue to do good work and quality work. And so that's what public media is. It's just great storytellers, and we appreciate all of you that support us.
Thank you.
So I think that was, okay, so that was all we had time. Thank you all so much for coming and watching this film that meant so much to us. You can still watch it on YouTube, if you want to watch it or share it with a friend. Thank you to you lovely gentlemen for being with me today and all of us. And so we do have, this is part of Arkansas Live that's on Arkansas PBS. This live stream, we always try to, we say we can give you a front row seat to something you may not be able to attend. So you can always watch those.
There's also an exhibit of, I don't know if I just stole your thunder, sorry.
You did.
Then you do it.
So if you didn't have a chance to see the exhibit here featuring Jim Marshall's photographs of Johnny Cash's prison concerts at Folsom and San Quentin, it's definitely worth coming back to see, and the exhibit is up until October 12th. The admission is free, and there's no tickets required, so please come and visit that. So thank you so much for being with us for this special screening.
Thank you all.